I'm going to follow up on the video I made a bit earlier today about police harassment, Niagara Regional Police Service in Ontario. I described an incident, and in that description I mentioned someone who called himself Art Reed and said he looked identical to City Councillor Joe Kushner. Now there's more to that. After the incident that I described, this individual who called himself Art Reed, I had gone to court over another matter. I had been the target of a couple of assaults, and so I had been to court, and a lawyer had advised me to ask security to escort me to the courtroom and out again. And security, when I left afterwards, they walked me right over to the public library, which I thought was, it was about a block away from the courthouse, but still, in that block there in St. Catharines, the police and the courthouse and the library and the municipal office, City Hall, they're all within like about a block or so of each other. So it wasn't a long escort, but it was still, I thought, a bit over and beyond, what they were required to do. And while I was in the library, I went in, I was sitting at a table on the main floor doing some reading, and there was another man at the table with me. I didn't know him, he was a stranger. But anyway, while I was sitting there, this individual who called himself Art Reed came into the library, and he came over to me, and he had a newspaper clipping in his hand, and he shoved it in my face. He kind of shoved it toward me on the table and said, read this, it's a job, you have to apply for this job. And I said, no, get away from me, I'm not talking to you. And he kept it up to the point that the man who was also sitting at the table, this complete stranger, said, hey, leave her alone, And then he took the newspaper clipping back, so I never did see what it was. And he said to me, your car is going to be hauled and you will never walk straight again. And then he left. And the following Saturday, the superintendent of the apartment where I rented a flat, he woke me up at around 7 o'clock in the morning and told me I should go move my car because there was a truck there. They were going to haul it away. So I thought that was maybe what Art Reed had talked about. So I went out and I moved my car. I moved it onto the street. I paid for that spot. It was part of my parking spot. It was right behind my apartment. And I understand that it was a great big parking lot. So a lot of different agencies rented space there, including, I understood, the Crown Attorney also parked quite close to my spot. Anyway, it was a Saturday, so there wasn't a lot of city people around or provincial employees. But I moved my car and then I went back to the parking lot and I watched. And there was a tow truck there, and on the cab, it was a red cab, was the writing. It said Reed Haulage, Cave Springs Road, Beamsville, Ontario. And I watched it, and it kind of drove around the parking lot a few times and then left. It didn't, and I mean, there was a few other cars parked there. Mine wasn't the only car, but none of them had to move, and they were right next to mine where I park. None of them had to move, so I thought, okay, this is an incident of harassment. So the tow truck left, and I moved my car back to where it was parked before, and nobody came and hauled it away. I wasn't violating any infraction or anything. There's no reason for anyone to haul my car, except to harass me. I thought to follow up on what this Art Reed guy had said. Anyway, so after that, I had to go to Toronto. I went to Toronto and I was actively looking for work. That was why. I had been assaulted at my job at Brock University, And the police, through a lawyer, had told me that it wasn't safe to go back on campus again without a police escort, and I didn't have enough money to purchase a police escort 24 hours a day, while I was on campus. So I was looking for other work. And I was on my way to Toronto on Highway 2. And as I pulled into Beamsville, there was a car in front of me, and it stopped. It stopped to turn left onto Quarry Road. So I stopped behind it, and just as it was turning, I looked in my rearview mirror and I saw a car coming, and I knew he was coming way too fast to be able to stop. He had his arms outstretched on the wheel. He was looking right at me, and he didn't try to swerve or to slow down. He hit me, and the next thing I knew, I was kind of drifting along in my car, thinking, really, I had a sense of euphoria, thinking, I'm not dead. That's how hard he hit me. And then the next minute, I felt just really violent nausea rising up in my stomach, and then I passed out. So I was unconscious. And in retrospect, I thought, that is what this Art Reed guy meant. After I came to, that the fellow who hit me, his name is Jeffrey Wiersma. He told me, he said, he hits all sorts of people, and he said his father hits people too. And he wouldn't call the police. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have a cell phone at the time. And he refused to call the police, and passers-by that went by, he told them, he lied to them. He said, because some people were stopping and saying, do you need help? Do you want me to call the police? And he would say, no, I already called the police. They're on their way. Keep moving because you're going to get in the way of the emergency vehicles, and they would move along. So, eventually I convinced him to phone the non-emergency police, for an accident report. So that's the only report, and he lied to the police officer that came. The police officer that attended, he talked to Jeffrey Wiersma first. He didn't, and then he came over to me and said, "Oh, at least you weren't hurt." I said, "Well, I am hurt." And he said, "Well, you can just drive away now." And I said, "Well, no, my car, it was wrecked. I mean, the insurance ended up writing it off. The back end was shoved right up into almost right into the, and then the wheels, nothing would work. It was just damaged beyond repair." And the officer kind of went like that, because I guess at that point he probably realized that Wiersma had lied to him. Anyway, it was a severe hit. I went home, and I went to the hospital. The tow truck guy had to drive me to the hospital, and at the hospital it was weird because it was a Dr. Palancar Frost, and she refused to even do an x-ray. She said, "Your symptoms will get worse before they get better. Go home and don't come back. Don't seek any medical attention for at least 6 weeks." I thought that was kind of weird, but I went home, and then I started to vomit, and I couldn't stop vomiting. And I had no medical care, so I put myself into a shoulder stand because that was the only position in which I wasn't vomiting. And because I guess it would cut off, whatever it did to my neck or whatever, or my shoulder, or whatever, my spine. And then after I stayed like that for 3 days, except to go to the bathroom. I didn't eat at all. And then finally I fell asleep. I slept for maybe 4 hours, and when I woke up, it was this yellow stuff oozing out of my eyes and out of my ears. So at that point, I phoned Dr. Palancar Frost, and she was angry. She didn't want to talk to me. So I went to the hospital anyway, even though she had said not to seek medical advice. I don't know why, but at the time I thought, why does she, a doctor, why would a doctor say that? And it frightened me, so I had not sought medical help. But I went back at this point, and Dr. Donworth, he said, well, this was a really bad one. That was his description. It's a really bad one. Subsequently, all my teeth were loose. I could wiggle all my teeth, and they all broke off at the gum. And I had a concussion, obviously, and I was left with severe spinal stenosis, and also I started falling asleep in public all the time. I ended up having to have a pacemaker put in. So I was injured, and at the trial, the Crown made a deal, and with this Jeffrey Wiersma, and he said that he'd sentenced. I guess he was had been charged with dangerous driving initially, and the Crown reduced it to careless driving, and he was sentenced to driving school. The Crown said, but he said not just for hitting you. He hit some other people too. So driving school for hitting people he hit me going 80 kilometers. He told me that. That was the first thing he said to me. He said, oh, you're doing the speed limit. I was only going 80. Well, that wasn't the speed limit, but. And his father came up to me and he wanted to shake my hand. I asked his father wanted to shake. He held on to my hand, one of those, and he said, don't sue because it'll make my insurance rates go up. And I asked him, I said, was your son as hurt? I was hurt. I could barely walk at that time. I could stand up for maybe 10 minutes at a time. But, I was 6 months later. And his father said, oh, no, my son wasn't hurt. You don't get hurt if you use the right kind of car to hit someone. And he told me he'd hit all sorts of people too, and including a couple of toddlers he put into intensive care, he said. He called them whiners. So that is what this Art Reed guy, it's pretty clear to me. But you know what? I've told Niagara Police, I've told Kawartha Lakes Police, I've told the Ontario Independent Police Review Director, OIPERD, told them, told Warren Coral at the Ontario Civilian Police Commission, told Catherine Rippey there as well. She's an investigator. Nobody seems to think there's anything wrong with what happened. They think, oh, hey, Abernathy, just go away and shut up, basically is what they keep telling me. Because I guess my life is expendable in their eyes. I'm a worthless piece of human garbage to them. I don't know why. I don't have any criminal record. I've worked hard all my life. I haven't been particularly successful, but I've tried. And I don't even have so much as a traffic record. So what the heck? Why do they think it is okay for someone who claims he doesn't, he's not the person, he says he's not a city councillor, but why is it okay for anyone to be hit like that, to be threatened they're going to be hit, and then to be hit by a car and their back broken? Why is that okay? And it's not an isolated incident. That's one of many similar incidents of harassment. I will detail later